The Cotton Club, September 16, 1935. Over 200 people packed into Harlem's most dangerous nightclub, illegal whiskey flowing, jazz music pulsing through the air, and in the back corner, Bumpy Johnson sat alone, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. Nobody noticed him, not yet, because all eyes were suddenly on Dutch Schultz, the most powerful bootlegger in New York, as he stood up from his VIP table, his face burning red with rage and expensive bourbon. He didn't walk toward Johnson's table. He stomped. His bodyguards scrambled to follow as the entire club started to sense that something was about to go very, very wrong. Schultz reached Johnson's table and slammed his hand down so hard the bourbon glass jumped and spilled across the wood. And then he started screaming. Not talking, screaming. Loud enough that the band stopped playing. Loud enough that every conversation in the Cotton Club died mid-sentence. Loud enough that 200 witnesses heard every single word of what came next. "You've got some nerve showing your face here tonight, boy." Schultz's voice dripped with contempt. "You think running a few penny-ante policy banks makes you a real gangster? I've been trying to be reasonable with you people, trying to give you a chance to work for me, but you're too stupid to understand when somebody's doing you a favor." The silence that followed was absolute. Dutch Schultz, the man whose criminal empire generated $20 million a year, was publicly destroying Bumpy Johnson with racist slurs in front of hundreds of witnesses. This wasn't business. This was humiliation. This was a white gangster reminding a black gangster who really held power in 1935 New York. And Bumpy Johnson? He didn't stand. Didn't reach for the .45 automatic everyone knew he carried. Didn't make a single threatening gesture. He just looked up at Schultz with eyes that showed absolutely nothing. No anger, no fear, no reaction whatsoever. He simply waited for Schultz to finish. The entire club held its breath. People stared in horror and fascination as one of Harlem's toughest operators sat there taking this abuse without fighting back, without defending himself, just staring up at the man screaming racial slurs at him. And then Bumpy Johnson spoke. His voice was so quiet people had to strain to hear it, so calm it seemed disconnected from the fury Schultz was displaying, so cold that witnesses later described it as the most frightening thing they'd ever heard. "You've got 7 days to get every one of your people out of Harlem. After that, any white man I find running policy in my neighborhood dies. You want to insult me in public? That's your choice. But choices have consequences, Mr. Schultz. And the consequence of disrespecting Bumpy Johnson is that your people start dying. Not arrested, not beaten, dead. You've got 7 days. Schultz threw his head back and laughed, a huge, genuine laugh that filled the silent club. 7 days! This nobody thinks he can give me ultimatums. He turned to address the crowd. "You all heard him. This boy thinks he can threaten Dutch Schultz. In 7 days, you'll be working for me or you'll be dead. Those are your only options." Johnson didn't respond. He simply finished his bourbon, stood slowly, and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted like he was contagious. He walked past Schultz without looking at him, past the bodyguards, and disappeared into the Harlem night. Schultz spent the rest of the evening recounting the story to anyone who would listen, describing how he'd put that uppity colored boy in his place. He went to bed that night believing he'd won, believing he'd crushed his last serious opponent in Harlem in front of 200 witnesses. 6 hours and 43 minutes later, the first body was discovered. Vincent Clutch Mila was one of Schultz's best policy collectors, tough, reliable, effective. He finished his Monday night collections around 11 p.m. with $4,000 in cash. He never made it home. At 6:23 Tuesday morning, a sanitation worker found Mila's body stuffed in a garbage drum behind a warehouse. The injuries were horrific, every finger broken, face beaten beyond recognition, 11 ice pick wounds, throat cut so deeply the knife had scraped bone. But it was the note pinned to his shirt that made police understand this wasn't just a murder. 1 down, 7 to go, leave Harlem. By 9 a.m., word had spread throughout New York's underworld. Dutch Schultz heard it over breakfast and initially dismissed it as unrelated. Then he learned about the note. Bumpy Johnson had actually meant what he'd said. The 7-day deadline wasn't empty posturing. It was a literal promise. Schultz's reaction was predictable. Rage, threats, orders to find Johnson immediately and kill him. But Johnson had vanished. His apartment empty. His policy banks closed. Nobody knew where he was. And Harlem's community, still furious about Monday night's public humiliation, refused to help the white gangster who'd called their people slurs find the black gangster killing his men. Wednesday morning, an envelope appeared under Schultz's door. 1 down, 7 to go. Your collector is dead because you disrespected us. The next one dies today. At 2:15 Wednesday afternoon, Raymond Red Sullivan's body was discovered, shot execution style in the back of the head. His 2 bodyguards lay nearby, killed in a brief gunfight they'd lost decisively. The note, 2 down, 6 to go. Thursday morning brought another envelope, and Thursday night brought another body. Thomas Little Tommy Brennan, stabbed 17 times with an ice pick, tortured the same way Mila had been. 3 down, 5 to go, last chance to leave. By Thursday afternoon, Dutch Schultz was genuinely frightened for the first time in his criminal career. 3 key operators dead in 3 days, killed with precision that suggested careful planning and capability he hadn't anticipated. The notes kept coming, kept counting down, kept reminding him that 5 more deaths were promised unless he withdrew completely. Schultz called an emergency meeting, find Johnson regardless of cost, kill him and everyone associated with him, burn down Harlem if necessary. But finding Johnson remained impossible, and his remaining Harlem operators were terrified, understanding that 5 of them were still marked for death. Friday brought 2 more bodies. Anthony Little Tony Benedetto, beaten to death in an alley. Joseph Joey Numbers, shot in the face in a crowded restaurant, while dozens of witnesses watched 2 men calmly walk in, execute him, and walk out. 5 down, 3 to go, and 6 down, 2 to go. Friday evening, another envelope arrived, this one longer, spelling out exactly why this was happening. You want to know why your people are dying? Because you disrespected us. You came into our neighborhood, called us names, told us we're too stupid to run our own operations. You thought being white made you superior. You were wrong. Get out of Harlem. Never come back. Saturday morning, Harold Bunny Weinstein, one of Schultz's top lieutenants, was found shot in his car in broad daylight in Midtown Manhattan. 7 down, 1 to go. Yours ends tomorrow. Schultz spent Saturday in near panic, barricaded in his Bronx headquarters. He sent messages to his last remaining Harlem operator, Patrick O'Brien, telling him to go into hiding, to survive Sunday, to prove Johnson's threats weren't inevitable. O'Brien hid in a safe house with 4 armed guards, but Sunday evening at 8:47, a woman knocked claiming to have the wrong apartment. When a guard opened the door, she threw a gasoline bomb inside. The apartment erupted in flames. Guards ran for the back exit and were cut down by shotgun fire from men waiting in the alley. O'Brien tried escaping through a window, but was shot before he could climb through. When firefighters recovered his burned corpse, they found a partially burned note. 8 down, 0 to go. Harlem belongs to Harlem. Don't ever disrespect black brothers. Monday morning, Schultz received his final message. 8 of your men are dead because you chose to disrespect me in public. You laughed at me. You called me names. I wasn't bluffing. Your 8 dead men prove that. You have 24 hours to close every operation in Harlem. After that, I start killing your people everywhere, 1 per day until you're completely gone. This is about respect. Get out, stay out, and remember what it cost you when you forgot that colored gangsters deserve the same respect you demand for yourself. By Tuesday evening, every one of Schultz's Harlem operations had shut down, 18 months of work and substantial investment abandoned. He'd retreated rather than continue losing men to an opponent who demonstrated the capability and will to kill indefinitely. The story spread throughout New York's underworld, retold in every speakeasy and mob social club. Dutch Schultz had publicly humiliated Bumpy Johnson, and within 7 days, 8 of his men were dead, and Schultz had been driven out of Harlem. The lesson lasted not just years, but generations. White gangsters who dealt with black operators after 1935 were careful about language, careful about displays of contempt, careful about assuming racial superiority, gave them license to treat anyone as inferior, because everyone remembered what happened to Dutch Schultz. Bumpy Johnson emerged from hiding Tuesday, September 24th, walking casually down Lenox Avenue like he'd never been gone. When reporters asked about the 8 murders, his response was simple. Harlem protects its own. Anybody who comes here disrespecting our people learns that choices have consequences. Dutch Schultz made his choice Monday night at the Cotton Club. He paid for it with 8 of his people. You disrespect black brothers, you pay the price. Remember that, and you'll live a lot longer. Dutch Schultz never returned to Harlem. 1 month later, he was killed in Newark by hitmen sent from other gangsters who decided he was too reckless, too dangerous, and Bumpy Johnson took over his former operations, building them into an empire. 8 bodies in 7 days, a message written in blood that New York's underworld never forgot.